Pancho returned from the doctor's appointment late that morning. He was dressed in his now typical doctor visit attire, a golf shirt instead of his t-shirt and boat shoes instead of his flip-flops. His face was solemn as he entered the kitchen. I had been waiting for him to return, holding my breath and pacing. "What did the doctor say? What did you find out?" I asked, while standing at the door so anxious I could not wait for him to walk in. "Well," he grimaced as he tilted his head to the left, "it's not good." He had been told the results of the biopsy done during surgery to remove the lymph gland that had hardened into a knot on his neck. I held the paper he brought home in my hand. It was stage 4 squamous cell carcinoma cancer with an unknown primary. "What does it mean?" I wanted to know. "It means they can't find where it started. They do not know the primary source, but it's already spread to my lymph glands." We stood for a second, frozen, and stared at each other. He had found the hard knot on his neck in November and started with his primary care doctor. The diagnosis was confirmed with the surgery and biopsy in March. That moment we looked into each other's eyes, knowing his life was terminal. The diagnosis brought our focus to the reality of death. Something about our relationship changed after that lightning strike. There are moments and places in your life that you will always remember. We were standing in our living room. The antique clock given to us by his Danish grandmother, Betsy, ticked quietly and rhythmically. I saw the look of fear in his eyes and listened to him apologetically share the truth that he could no longer avoid. He had really known since November when he had taken that needle biopsy. At that time, he tried to make light of it. "They said there were some thick cells in the lymph gland." Pancho choked out the words. With the full reality on the table, we held each other and wept. At night, I would find myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. With my hand on his back, I used magical thinking. Perhaps I could somehow heal him if I kept it there all night. Often, warm tears of disbelief streamed down from the edges of my eyes to wet the pillow. Bridget, a close friend, offered hope of healing with a spiritual book about spontaneous remission. We needed hope. We needed miracles. We needed magic. Spiritual books were a long shot. I had been on a spiritual path since the children were born, but Pancho had little interest in things that could not be seen or touched. I was living with the teachings of A Course in Miracles, which is a universal teaching rather than a religion. It is a complete self-study spiritual thought system, one version of the universal curriculum of which there are many thousands. The goal of ACIM is happiness and peace. At the same time, I was providing hospice grief counseling. I had shared my spiritual insights with Pancho in the past, though he never admitted he agreed with me. Now, with his cancer diagnosis, our spiritual path took on new meaning. Pancho became open to possibilities. "You can read it to me," Pancho said, and we began to take long drives so I could read it to him aloud. Virginia Arnson called the book Celestial Healing. As crazy as it sounds, it gave an account of a miraculous healing through the intervention of a hovering light. The author lived not far from us in Florida. This made it more personal. After being given a prognosis of only days to live and being told she would never leave the hospital, she begged an orderly to let her go home one more time to see her young son. The orderly agreed, but only if she promised to be back by morning. The book described her experience. At home, while lying on her bed, her body froze, and she watched the room fill with a white fog. Her body seemed to levitate, and through the window, she observed what appeared to be a disc-shaped object 8 to 12 inches across. It scanned her body with a blue light, and she believes that day she was healed and lived to write the story of that healing blue light. Pancho listened. We wanted to believe in miracles, but the reality was we were both terrified. I continued searching for cures, for healing tools. Our reading expanded to all sorts of health and wellness books provided to us by Beth, my best friend since childhood. She brought her books in stacks. Of course, we tried everything. We flew to Mexico to have the mercury fillings removed from Pancho's teeth by a biological dentist trained by the expert Hal Huggins, who wrote The Root Canal Cover-Up. Pancho's affected lymph gland was now just below a root canal. Since neither of the doctors nor the PET scans could find an originating source for the cancer, we hoped it might be in his mouth. We started raw juicing and put Pancho on an alkaline diet, as a Nobel Prize winner had discovered cancer could not grow in an alkaline system. We poured through the books. I stayed up late at night researching his diagnosis on the internet. I read a heap of medical papers I did not understand. I did understand this type of cancer was not good. Few people survived. I did not tell Pancho everything I read. I did not want to steal his hope. We prayed for a healing. One night in March 2003, there was a full moon. While I lay in bed, it began the moon. It began shining through the blue glass gazing ball hanging in the window at the foot of our bed. The light shone like a beacon, and it focused directly on Pancho, covering him with a blue light. I turned my head to look at the time. It was 4:44. For many years, I had been seeing master numbers, reoccurring digits such as 1111, 111, 222, 333, but especially 444. They appeared in phone numbers, license tags, a wide variety of places, and I gave significance to the appearance of those numbers. I was not the only one. So had others, including Dr. Doreen Virtue, who wrote Healing with the Angels. She was a psychologist who had an angelic intervention that saved her life and changed her future and her work in the world forever. Those numbers caught my attention and made me pause and think. I had developed my own personal meaning for those numbers as messengers. It was a language. I had come to call them the language of the angels. I was in shock and began to tremble. The moon shining through the blue glass orb, sending a blanket of light at 4:44. It had to be a miracle. The event stayed close to the top of my hopes for months. What are the odds, I asked myself. Each month, I waited for another full moon, expecting it to make a second appearance. It never did. Each month, it tracked a slightly different path across the sky. I never did witness the light shine through the gazing ball on the full moon, creating the same blue bath on his side of the bed. For months afterwards, Pancho and I stood and watched the full moon rise over the ocean. I thought about the experience in March. Did it mean anything except hope? Was it significant? I wanted it to happen again. I wanted it to shine through the blue globe and bring its healing light. It did not, but that night I dreamt about it happening. In my dream, on the front of the blue globe, there was a target marking the spot in the form of a cross. The upward arm was a feather. I woke from the dream and looked at the clock, 4:44. I sat straight up and climbed out of bed. I wanted to see where the moon was in the sky. I stepped out into the porch outside our bedroom and found it overhead. The moon was 20 degrees south of where it had been the night of the blue light. I said my prayer, asking for all the forces of God and the universe to come into our being. The rest of the night, I was aware of an energy vibrating in the area of my heart. Our first blue light experience had been a miracle. Ultimately, living 10 years with stage 4 cancer and his diagnosis is practically unheard of medically. That and many other events over the next 10 years gave us hope. The miracle of hope is a major importance for healing. Healing requires faith and hope.